And welcome to another edition of TryKnoxville.com. Mike Roberts along for the ride again this week, and things are starting to look better outside. The snow's melting away, and we're actually starting to tease spring a little bit, if you will. We've got a very special guest with us today, and again, to explain, Try Knoxville talks about Knoxville community, talks about why people should give us a chance, not just in tourism, but also possibly move here. Uh, but what we're known for around this area, besides Knoxville Raceway, obviously, is our ag businesses and farmers. I grew up a farmer, as I've mentioned several times. I haven't been on the farm since 1995, but as I told everybody, I put my first 30 years in, so I'm good. I've retired and moved on to another career. But Leslie Miller rather has been gracious enough to come up here and help us out with the show this week because Marion County Bank, who she is with, is sponsoring or co-sponsoring an event next week that we think is very important to area farmers and all farmers really to check it out for next week. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But for those of you that tune in from around the world and don't know who Leslie is, I'm going to say jump back in the Wayback Machine again. We're going to go back to where you were born and raised.
I was actually born and raised in Northern Illinois.
Okay.
I actually came to Iowa as a student at Iowa State University and stayed when I met my husband there, who was originally from Van Buren County in southern Iowa. And a lot of local viewers know my husband Dale Miller. He
Sure.
was the head of the county extension office for 30 plus
I guess
years.
I was going to say forever. So.
Forever, yeah. So ever since we came here,
Yeah.
and we've been involved with agriculture and with extension basically since we graduated from Iowa State, and we're very fortunate. Started out in southern Iowa. I was in Davis County doing my banking, and Dale was in Van Buren County as the extension director. I actually got to sadly experience a competitor bank of ours in 1984. The Exchange Bank became the first bank to fail, first agricultural bank to fail since the Depression in the state of Iowa, and that was very trying for those borrowers and depositors. Very sobering lesson to us all at that time. I will never forget seeing the superintendent of banking. He came and knocked on the door of the bank, and we let him in. We didn't know what was going on, and he said, "Can we bring the assets of the Exchange Bank down and lock them in your vault overnight?" We said, "Yes." We
That had to catch you off guard.
that
Like,
yeah,
what
we're
is
like,
going on? Yeah.
yeah, and then he said, and then can you have people stay because we have over 1,300 checks that we have to return because they can't be paid. And at that time, when you returned a check, you literally stamped the check at the back of the check, and there was 9 boxes, like uncollected funds or, negative balance, all this, no signature. But the 9th box had a blank line, and so we were stamping checks, and we'd check that box, and we'd write "bank closed" on all those checks that went back. And it was like I said, it was a very sobering lesson. It was the heart of a drought. The drought.
That
in
time period we're talking about
Yeah.
too started to become tough on farmers
It
and
was
banks.
it was the start of the 80s,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
and so it just very very tough circumstances. A lot of people didn't have crop insurance at that time, and
Right.
just bad losses. A lot of people struggled. A lot of people went out of business, and the bank went out of business. But going from there, spent several more years in Davis County, and then I went to Washington D.C., where I headed the Ag Bankers Association for the American Bankers Association,
Okay.
and it was a tremendous experience. Got to rub elbows with the Secretary of Agriculture at that time and worked with our lobbyists to pass Farmer Mac legislation, which is a lending program. We also got to work with bankers and farm economists throughout the United States putting together the Farm Financial Standards, which is what a lot of people, a lot of bankers, a lot of economists, a lot of farm consultants use to help farmers become better business people, to analyze their operation and make sure that they're doing things as efficiently and as well as they can.
What year are we talking for Washington D.C.?
Well, we were in D.C. Dale and I were in D.C. from '87 through '90, and then Dale and I came to Marion County, which has been wonderful. I love Knoxville. The people here have been very very good to work with, very welcoming. Love my farm customers.
When you grew up in Northern Illinois, did you have dreams of I'm going to be in D.C. someday? I mean, what were your thoughts? First of all, were you on a farm in Northern Illinois then?
No, no.
Okay, yeah. Let's get back to that.
Actually, my farming background, that I was not raised on a farm.
Sure.
But my great aunt and my grandfather, they actually started Rice Company down in Stuttgart, Arkansas.
Okay.
So, and they had actually been in Iowa originally, but farmland at that time was too expensive in Iowa. So in the early 1900s, they went to Arkansas where land was cheaper and started rice farming.
It's funny you bring up rice. I literally went to Memphis last June, and I've been in different parts of Arkansas, but I never paid attention until this trip. And I'm seeing these plants. And I'm like, what is that? And I had to stop and research it. And
Yeah.
that's the first time I didn't know rice was grown in Arkansas.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and a
Huge-
lot.
A lot of it,
Yeah.
yes, because of course, like I said, Rice is based
Right.
there, and requires very level fields so they can flood them, and lots of deep wells down there. I remember my great aunt when she was close to 90 years old. They had to put in a deep well, and she goes, they told me to put that in when I was 75, but I figured I'd never live long enough to get the good out of it. She said, I finally have to put one in. And so, anyway, very interesting business. But, my ag exposure is really more Midwest with
Sure.
corn, soybeans, cattle, hogs, dairy. And, that's really where my comfort level is at this point in time. But
You mentioned you and Dale came to Marion County eventually, and you guys met at ISU,
yes.
right? Remember where you met exactly?
Actually, we met in it was an animal science class.
Okay.
It was, well, Dale remembers me being in one of his classes earlier, but I did not remember him.
Okay.
It happened to be a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock class.
Okay.
So, it was one of those classes you're kind of pretty much there and then you left
The weekend's
really
here.
fast.
Yeah, the weekend's here.
So, anyways, we met in a animal nutrition class for the second time, and that I always really enjoyed animal nutrition. He did as well, but not as much as I did. So we would study together and spend time together. We had other courses that were similar, but not at the same time. And,
Right.
Obviously, the attraction grew, and
Right.
and we've been together ever since. But yeah, it was. That was a course that at one time I thought I would go on and get my master's in livestock nutrition, but I started to have an interest in farm management. I had a chance to work as an intern for Northern Trust Bank the summer between junior and senior year.
Okay.
And at that time, they were the largest farm management firm in the world. They were bigger than Doan's, and they actually ran it out of their trust department. So they had several farms and ranches all over the United States that were actually left in trust that they managed. And so they had a group of farm managers. They were also doing things like putting together a dairy project in the Ukraine at that point in time. And were globally recognized. They eventually sold that farm management firm, but I had a chance to work there, be exposed to
Like I said,
different
you've
types of
had
agriculture.
A lot of opportunities.
Oh yeah,
I
great.
mean,
I really have been very fortunate in that respect. Yeah.
so how do you come to Marion County, Iowa, and not only come here but stay here because you were kind of jumping around there for a little
Oh,
while?
we were. Yeah. Just simply, it was a great place to be. Enjoyed working at Iowa State Savings Bank. Dale enjoyed working with Extension, and we were very fortunate because the owners of Iowa State Savings Bank allowed me to participate in other types of activities. So I got to work with several of the state level committees on, for example, I was with the Beginning Farmer Program. I was on their board from 93 to 2003. Got to shape some new programs, help put together the down payment assistance program with them. Also worked with the Ag Lending School that the Iowa Bankers Association and Iowa State University would put on. Had participated in several meetings or state level meetings when there would be a drought, or 1998 when the hog prices tanked to $12. Was involved with that, and worked very heavily with Extension to do programs for bankers as well as for farmers, and so that kind of gave me that upper story or upper level kind of exposure, and yet. The one thing when I was in Washington, D.C., I really missed working with my farm customers. And so by doing that, by being at the bank, I got a chance to work with farm customers, and then I could dabble in the other stuff that was interesting and fun and keep your mind active.
Have a career, but yet have
Right.
a serious hobby, if you will.
Yeah.
The stuff you had your passion on. Again, when you and Dale came to Knoxville, moved to Marion County, had you ever even heard of Knoxville, Iowa before?
Actually, yes,
Okay.
because Dale, before we went to DC, well, actually before he started an extension in Van Buren County,
Mm-hmm.
they had him intern with an extension office, and it was actually the Marion County Extension
Okay.
Office. So we knew of Knoxville from that. At the
Sure.
time, the fairgrounds, the racetrack, the activity that's out here really allowed Marion County to have a really nice set of fairground buildings and have some nice programs in place for 4-H.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that job was coming open, Dale really did look at it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Felt that it was a great office to be associated with. Knew some of the people in there from his internship that he was involved with. So it was the perfect place to come. And being in central Iowa, it was a little different than being down in Van Buren and Davis County, but not totally, because really Marion County pretty much is divided in half. The southern part of the county has soil that's very similar to Davis and Van Buren County. It's just there's a lot more clay in it,
Right.
just not as predictable as what we have in the northern part of the county. And so, there's a little bit of finesse, if you will, in understanding that, those are different types of operations that they need to operate differently. They need to be financed differently. You need to be sure and have allowances for some crop shortfalls in the southern part of the county, and maybe not as much in the north. So it's a great county, and the diversity of agriculture, I think, is what really keeps your brain very interested in looking at all the ag programs and staying on top of a lot of information and trying to be as helpful as you can to your customers by knowing that information and sharing it with them.
I know things have finally changed more in this era, but growing up as a kid around here all my life, it always fascinated me to travel to other counties. And it'd be, oh, this county's famous for cattle. This county's famous for hogs. This county's famous for crops. And I'm sitting here as a kid going, we do it all in Marion
You
County.
do.
I mean, we at that time, there was hog operations. And I'm not talking to corporate hogs. I'm talking farmers had hogs.
That's right. They
You
were
know,
the mortgage
cattle.
lifters,
Yeah,
remember? Yeah.
exactly. When I grew up, we had hogs, we had cattle, we had dairy cattle, we had everything.
Yeah.
And eventually it's kind of you've had to fine tune what you want to do and what you didn't want to do because of the way things were dominant. You've been on that roller coaster through agricultural, nay, I say, disaster to growing back up. You talked about being down in Bloomfield, and all of a sudden this bank shows up and says, "Here, hold this stuff for us."
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about the hog market crashing. We've all seen droughts now. You've
Right.
got some serious experience and some serious knowledge, not just from college background, if you will, but experience background because of who you've done business with, not only in banking, but in D.C. and your travels. And that's one of the things that I think is really neat about this program that I want to talk about because you guys are sponsoring this. It's next Wednesday, March the 3rd at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And our friend Dave Hoke got a hold of me. He goes, "Hey, I'm going to send you this flyer." He says, let's do a story on this and see what you think. And again, I'm the old farmer background. I want farmers to succeed all the time. I don't care what business they are, same as you. If they're successful, we're successful.
Right.
And you and I had a visit the other day, and I have to be honest, you shocked me a little bit because, as everybody knows, I'm diehard Knoxville Raceway. I've been sneaking out here as a kid, not paying to get in way back when, to working for them now. And it just, you made an announcement of financially, in Marion County, the dollar amounts of revenues are equal to what they do. And I know they've got millions and millions of dollars over here, but farmers do too.
The economic impact from the agricultural industry is every bit as strong in Marion County as the economic activity generated by the racetrack.
Yeah.
It's still a very important part of our economic growth. And so it benefits not only my customers and the bank, but the entire community if we help our farmers be as successful as they can possibly be. And some of the things we can't control, like the weather, but we can control how they price we can control how they market their grain in terms of trying to lock in prices ahead of time. Right now, we've got Eddyville has a 444 October price, and ADM has an 1190 October price on beans. And so there's some opportunities out there where farmers could start to price some grain if they wanted to, and it's at a level that assures them profit. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have Chad Hart come and do this seminar. Chad Hart is a marketing specialist, grain marketing specialist from Iowa State University. He's not only really smart about that subject area, but he's also very entertaining to listen to. He very much will touch base on the global perspective because, as you know, China is a huge part of our agricultural trade.
It's on TV every day.
Oh yeah,
It is.
I mean, there was a thing the other day that I saw where actually they are now China, in an effort to rebuild their hog herd, they're literally loading gilts onto planes in the Midwest. They stop in Alaska so that the hogs can get fresh air and rest for a little bit, and then they take them to China so that they can get their hog herd rebuilt faster. And that's when you realize that they're doing something like that, you realize how quickly they can rebuild that hog herd. But you also realize how desperate they are for protein because of the fact that they're taking that extreme measure. They're not waiting for the industry to grow itself. They're pulling hogs in.
They have billions and billions in population
Right.
over there they have to feed.
Yep.
And for those that aren't farmers or tuned in, just to kind of clarify a little bit, why stop in Alaska to let them rest? Animals, especially hogs, they get stressed.
Yeah.
And you can't keep them cooped up in an unfamiliar environment very long. And I can't even imagine on a plane. I just can't.
I know.
I know it's like hauling them on trailers.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's it's neat for the farmers, especially hog farmers.
Yeah.
You mentioned Chad, and wow, what a bio for one thing.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that he's entertaining, I mean, that should make anybody want to go because you're not going to be sitting there listening to numbers and crunches and everything. It sounds like it's going to be very informative and yet not bore you to death. Farmers have a history of being gamblers. They all are. You can't wake up every morning and play with Mother Nature and not be wanting to gamble a little bit. You mentioned the other day when we were talking the futures. The USDA is talking about we're going to have more soybeans, more crops, or more corn this year, rather.
Yeah.
And where? I guess. I mean, that's my question. What's going on to increase that?
Well, first of all, they'll pull acres from other crops.
Sure.
But we're also seeing that the CRP ground that's up for re-enrollment is not getting re-enrolled. USDA actually extended the sign-up period trying to get more acres back in. What I think when I hear that news is that means there's some ground that's been in CRP. It's been idled. It's not
Right.
been in production. That they're going to go ahead and put back into crops. And usually when you're coming out of CRP, you put that ground into beans. You can put it into corn, but that's kind of how it works normally. So that's a chance to up the bean acres. And corn acres, if you do the economics, there's a lot of corn acres in Illinois. It's corn on corn pretty heavily, as much as 70% of the
Right.
acres are that way. Well, they wouldn't be afraid to put 90% of their corn acres back into corn. They really roll the dice that way. And so we don't really know how the final mix is going to be. March 30th is when the acreage estimates come out from USDA, but there is definitely a suspicion that, and USDA actually did come out with increased acres for both crops, but there's a belief that will happen. The USDA report also, they didn't use trendline yields. They kind of pulled the yields back a little bit, and that kept the markets very optimistic. But by the same token, if we have good planting weather and it looks like we've got some decent subsoil moisture out there, then they may push those yields up to trendline yields, and we could lose some of the reasoning behind our good prices that we have now. China also, and they did this earlier. They canceled a bean shipment. We've had some downtrends in our markets this week. They can do that at any time.
Right.
So that's those kinds of things. It's tough for the average farmer to predict against, and so if they can do some forward contracting, if they can look at some of the information that Chad Hart will give them, that might give them an idea if they feel like now's a good time to do that. Traditionally, we've talked about forward contracting, some now, more in that April, May, June time period. He'll be able to tell us if that's still a good time, in his opinion, to look at doing some additional pricing. If farmers have done a little bit already, maybe they want to add to that. But if you study markets very long, you will see that normally by the end of June, certainly before the 4th of July, the peak has been put in, unless there's a drought, but the peak has been put in and that market will start falling off. So again, the marketing periods for forward contracting are the more optimal times traditionally have been between now and the end of June. So what Chad will give us as far as information and guidance will be very helpful, I think, to the farmers.
You mentioned the CRP program, and just to put that into perspective for those, again, that aren't farmers, it's a way to conserve soil.
Yes.
In the short version of it. It does pay. You do get a check for your land sitting there, and I don't want to say doing nothing. You've got it sown. Is the how do I say this without offending farmers? Used to be one, so I'll just say it out front. Back in the day, if you had corn this year, you had soybeans next year. You rotate back and forth, and then every once in a while you had to sow that down to bring it back to life, if you will.
Yeah.
To make it easy on understanding that. Has that changed that drastically where it's like, you know what? Beans are the thing to do right now. We're going to go beans back to back to back or corn back to back to back. Is it all market now is the reason they do that?
In our area, most of the farmers do corn soybean rotation.
Still rotation, yeah.
Because they don't, the beans, you can't do beans and beans and beans.
Right.
There's too many disease problems that build up and pest problems that they have. So we do have a good rotation. If the ground does not slope very much, it frequently just stays continuous row crops. But we do have a lot of farmers that are looking at planting cover crops, which provide the same benefits that farmers would have seen in past years from just putting it to hay ground for a few years.
Right.
So that has improved our soil till. It again conserves soil, keeps soil from running off. There's some carbon benefits associated with that. There's a big push right now in some of the entities that are out there, and I've just started looking into this, but they're going to pay for so much an acre for carbon credits, and so that's something that's been kind of unexplored by our local agricultural sector, but certainly is a chance for them to help conserve soil as well as reduce carbon. So that which is important for global warming for for people that are concerned about that. So there's some real benefits to having that conservation reserve program in place, because that ground also is pulling carbon from the air. And I think with this last presidential cycle, there were some comments. Matt Russell here on the local level had a chance to reach out to a lot of the campaigns and really talk about how we might utilize farmers as a way to decrease the amount of carbon and the influence of carbon on the atmosphere and on global warming. And I think that's just starting to catch fire a little bit.
I just showed my age. I realized how old I am now because I was talking about rotating and then putting hay ground in, and my daughter probably doesn't even remember that type of farming. But again, that was back when we had plows. I mean, we flipped it over big time. We went for the black soil. So that was our way of dealing with conservation. Things have changed so much. And we talked about Chad Hart, but Charles Brown coming in as well for this seminar, and his specialty, of course, farm management.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about, because I don't think, maybe more so now, definitely when I was growing up, you looked at a farmer and it wasn't a business. It was farming. It wasn't even considered a business. It's a big business, as you mentioned, revenue-wise, gambling-wise, if you will, taking chances, the investments. I drive around now and look at corn, for instance, and see how tight everything is in rows and everything. I'm like, how does that even grow? But the business has changed. The hybrids have changed. I mean, the whole situation is different. And this is why this seminar is important. Something I did not clarify, and I want to clarify this. This is an in-person seminar, and it's the first one since the COVID shutdown, as I call it, that's happening. You are going to cap it off at 50 people, it looks like. It's going to be held at the Marion County Extension office in the gymnasium there. I guess everything about this kind of excites me a little bit, but the fact that we're starting to do face-to-face stuff again.
Yeah.
Again, masks are required. You're going to have, I'm assuming, pods set up for families or what have you.
They're actually doing it in the gym at the extension office, and because of that, we can seat people 6 feet apart. If there's a husband and wife team, they they can obviously sit together, or people that don't mind sitting next to each other can sit together. But the idea is to be able to space people out. We really have all ages signed up right now, and I think in deference to some of those people that may be more susceptible to adverse effects with COVID, it just seems to us like it's a good idea for everybody to wear masks, protect everyone, and we will have beverages that people can. They'll be single serve, so
Sure.
we're trying to make it as safe as we can for people so they do feel comfortable in attending. And we think that we talked about Chad talking about markets, not only grain markets, but he'll also talk about cattle markets too. But then Charles will actually talk about the farm programs because you talk about agriculture when you grew up.
Right.
The farm programs are so much more heavily involved now, and so farmers are trying to make a choice between going with ARC or PLC as the sign-up program for the year ahead, and there's benefits to both. PLC certainly allows some additional crop insurance benefits that farmers can receive to lower the cost of crop insurance because we are really concerned about what those costs might be. And it's really timely from the standpoint that farmers have to sign up for crop insurance, get that settled before March 15th.
Right.
They also have to sign up for ARC and PLC before March 15th. So having Charles there to explain the benefits of each program as well as how crop insurance works with them, for those people that still have not decided what to do is going to be very helpful. But he also, you talk about how farming has become more of a business, and it has, it's still a lifestyle of sorts because we don't have huge corporate farms here in Marion County.
Right.
But the PPP program from the SBA, that program was used really heavily by a lot of our Knoxville businesses last spring
Right.
that were facing shortfalls because of the fact that everything shut down and people could not go to their business. So they expanded it recently in a manner that farmers could use it as well because there was recognition that farmers are businesses. They also are changing some things. We don't have the final regulations. I think they're supposed to come out next week.
Okay.
But small business people, people that file a Schedule C, they also had some provisions changed where they could qualify for more money. And so, whether you're a farmer or a small business person, check with your bank and see if you can get a PPP loan application because if you can show that you have spent enough money from those loan funds for payroll or wages or owner's compensation, it's entirely possible that that loan could be forgivable, and you might not have to pay that money back at all.
Right.
Plus, the people that got loans last spring, that money is not shown as income on their tax return. So they've received a great benefit from that, and it was a needed benefit.
Right.
So we're thinking the same benefits will hopefully satisfy the same needs that we have now with the new program updates.
We're just about out of time, but I want to touch base on that because you explained this to me in detail the other day with that PPP program and farmers. It's kind of a transition because a lot of the farmers, they don't write themselves checks.
No, they don't.
And you have to have record keeping on that. You have to start taking a payroll check.
Right. And really, what I'm not an expert. Charles will tell us more next week, but accountants that have advised their clients to, that literally write yourself a check and put wages or owner compensation on the memo line so that you have a copy of that check to show the SBA if you're ever audited to prove that you did spend money for payroll or owner's compensation. And then if that's the case, then, the loan can be, it's more than 60% right now is the way the rule is for labor or owner's compensation. Then your loan might be forgivable. And that's a huge benefit. So I understand we have a lot of people. We even have people that actually they haven't borrowed money, they haven't banked with us, that they've maybe talked to their bank who's not really doing that program, and we've said, come in, we'll help you out and get the paperwork filled out. It's pretty easy paperwork.
Okay, this program is next Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's co-sponsored by Marion County Bank and the Iowa State University Extension and Outreach, Marion County. It will be at the Extension Office Gymnasium.
Correct.
Two sets of words, I should say, that I didn't use a year ago. There will be social distancing and what I call pods, where if your family, you sit together as a pod together. Pods. when we thought pods were growing, or I thought pods, it'd bean pods. That's
Oh,
all I
yeah.
thought
Oh,
about,
yeah.
you know. So new generations, I guess. So if they want to get involved in this and attend this seminar, a phone number is good, and we'll put this on our Facebook page as well, 641-842-2014. And there was a deadline of today. I understand you're a little over halfway there, so you still have some room to grow.
Right. We can take more. And actually, I really encourage you people to call. If they have enough notice, they might even be able to squeeze just a few more people in than the 50-person limit. So if you are interested, please call the Extension office ASAP.
All right. Thank you for coming down. I hope to have you again. We'll talk more farming because I enjoyed this conversation.
Good. I'm glad. I enjoyed visiting with you, Mike.
All right.
Thank
That's
you.
going to wrap it up for this edition of TryKnoxville.com. You can catch each episode every week live from the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame and Museum. And we encourage you to come out and check out the museum as well in your spare time. And if you do happen to miss all of this show, we will have it rebroadcast and on the recording of it on TryKnoxville.com, also on our Facebook page, and also on YouTube. We'll see everybody next time.